Hi, I'm Dave Monty and welcome to my video series, Everything Villages. Today is part 2 of a 3-part series on pricing in the villages, and we're going to talk specifically about location, and we're going to get into details about the location, not just price. So stay tuned. Before we get started, if you like this video, please hit like. If you like my channel, please subscribe to it. Both those actions help these videos reach more people, and I greatly appreciate it. Also, if you'd like a copy of my free 42-page guide, Buying and Selling a Home in the Villages, you can email me right here at davemontysales@gmail.com, and I'll send you out a copy. Also, I have a nifty cost of living calculator, and I'll show that a little bit in this video. If you'd like a copy of that, again, you can email me right here at davemontysales@gmail.com. Before we get too much into the villages, the very first thing to talk about is pricing within the villages versus outside the villages. First of all, villages is a public entity. It is a city. So people from the public have access to the town squares, to the restaurants, even limited access to the golf courses. You can even eat in the country club restaurants if you like. So the villages is public. If you live outside the villages, you can't use the rec facilities, and you can't belong to the clubs. And that's the biggest difference between inside and outside, other than price. You can expect to pay anywhere from about 30% more to almost 100% more for a home inside the villages versus outside the villages, depending on what you need. As an example, my house, I live just outside the villages in a community called Lakeside Landing. My house would almost be, I have a view, a little bit of one, and that one, my house would be almost double the price inside the villages. I mean, I move it 1,000 feet and it's double the price. A house that doesn't have a view in here, there's bigger lots here. So you're not back to back with somebody if you've got a standard lot. Say an 1,800 square foot home is going to go maybe $380,000 in the current market here inside Lakeside Landing. That same home inside the villages with a very similar lot, it's probably going to cost high 400s, if not low 500s. So there's a big difference inside and outside the villages. When I'm working with a buyer, I start asking them, okay, you're interested in the villages, what do you like to do? If you're more of a homebody and you want to go into the town squares every once in a while, you're not a golfer, you're not going to take advantage of the clubs, there's not necessarily a reason to pay that huge premium inside the villages, again, because you have access to it. So, when I'm working with buyers, I like to learn what they like to do and provide the options and then narrow down the options for them. One of the biggest questions I get asked all the time is, what is this village like? And what is that village like? And which village would you want to live in? And I break up the villages not necessarily into individual villages, but more general areas. Generally, the villages were built from north to south, older to newer, less expensive to more expensive in general. A village that is way north next to another village that's way north are going to be almost identical. They morph over time, with changing styles and all that. Over 20 years, everything has changed. So a village up here versus a village that's way down south is going to be, a lot different. But the two villages south are going to be very identical next door to another, and the ones up north are going to be very close. So again, it's more about the general area that you're in, and that's what we're going to talk about is more general areas. Now, there are exceptions. There's Bridgeport, which is a premier community that's kind of near Sumter Landing. So there are exceptions to the rule, but in general, the villages have, little meaning. And I get it all the time. Which village is this in? I'm like, I'm not 100% sure. It's either going to be this one or this one, because there's no, it's not like there's a different entrance for some of these villages. Again, I've already said this. You got built from north to south, older to newer, less expensive to more expensive, older community, newer community. Like any community, the closer you get to the downtown areas, the more expensive it gets. Now, if I'm near Spanish Springs in the older section, even if I'm right on top of Spanish Springs, I'm still going to pay less than I would be if I am a little bit further away from like Brownwood in the newer section. So there are a lot of things will affect pricing. But if I'm within the Spanish Springs area, a little bit further out, it's going to be less expensive than right on top of it. as an example. So, 5-minute golf cart ride, you're probably 5%, if not more than this. We get into the pricing here. I'm going to talk about taxes, bond, how those are affected, and just relative, price per square foot. If I were to search everything, a home that has a pool, that has a view lot is going to be a lot more expensive than the average home in the villages. So what I try to do is come up with the average home. So I went between like 1,100 and 2,100 square feet for all of this data. I didn't put a pool in and I didn't have a view. So we're talking about homes with interior lots just to give you a baseline. In the next video, I'm going to talk about off that baseline, how much a pool will add, how much a view will add, how much a golf cart garage will add, etc. Okay, but in general, every number that I'm showing here is just based on this search criteria. The only thing that's going to be a little bit different might be just the very first one we talk about. Orange Blossom. This is the original section of the villages, manufactured homes for the most part. There are homes in there that have been torn down. You can expect to pay maybe $160,000 to maybe $250,000 for a manufactured home in there. Now, a lot of homes have been torn down. So if you've got a house that's been built on one of those lots on a golf course with a pool, homes in there can actually get up to $500,000, 500,000. Usually those are the houses that were on the golf course where someone bought the manufactured home, tore it down, and built a house. Okay, but in general, if you're up here, your bond is going to be nothing. There wasn't a bond or a CDD payment on there. However, this is in Lake County and Lady Lake. In taxes in here, the millage rate, the rate of taxes are going to be a little bit higher than you would be in most of the villages, and most of it's in Sumter County. And we'll talk about that in general. All right, the next section up is going to be Spanish Springs. Spanish Springs, again, in Lake County, a little bit higher taxes because you're paying Lake County taxes, which are higher than Sumter. And you also have an additional tax for Lady Lake in there. So taxes are going to be a little bit higher. Price per square foot does jump up to $228,000 once you come over this $441,000. Most of the homes in here are stick-built homes. There are still a few manufactured homes scattered within this area. No bond still, no CDD. So very, from a tax standpoint, you don't have to pay the bond, but your tax rate on the county taxes is a little bit higher. The next section up here, and again, it's going to be older, and then newer as we start going south. So old and then a little bit newer up here in Marion County. So now that I'm in Marion County, it's actually $1 less per square foot. A little bit newer homes, okay, but a little bit further from Spanish Springs and a little bit further from a town square. So Spanish Springs is going to be right in here. Here is Sumter Landing, and here is Brownwood, and this is the new Eastport down here once that opens up. Okay, so if I'm in Marion County, I'm at $227 a square foot. The bond number in there, I would say, is going to average $320, maybe $400 a year on the bond. Because the homes are 2023, and I think they're 25-year bonds up there, they're real close to being paid off, most of them, if it's not already paid off. Bonds. Now, Marion County has a higher tax rate than you would in Sumter County. So Marion County, up in that area, has a higher tax rate. And you don't have to remember all this. All this is in my cost of living calculator, and I'm going to show you that at the end so you can kind of cross-reference and play around with pricing and stuff. As you start coming south, we're now in Sumter Landing. So you're going to be in Sumter Landing all the way down to here, except for up in this area. But down here, you start paying a Wildwood City tax on top of the Sumter Landing tax. So as you start going south, it gets a little bit more expensive, $236 a square foot. This should be $500 or $600. I just missed updating that. So the $500 or $600 on the bond on average. Again, only 2003 is the average build in this area. So pretty close for the bonds to be paid off. But annually, probably $500 or $600. Next section down, and I kind of categorize this a little bit different because it is slightly separated from this area here. $253 a square foot, again, a little bit more expensive, a little bit newer of a home. Bonds are now on average at $750, and again, in Sumter County, where that's probably the lowest, or is the lowest tax rate in the area. Right on top of Sumter Landing, again, very similar. I mean, we're only $1 per square foot more, a little bit newer of a home, a little bit more on the bonds. You've got probably 5 years left on the bond, and in this area, you're probably between $8,000 to maybe $12,000 left on a bond on this area. This is the most expensive price per square foot in the villages on average. These are the newest homes in the traditional part of the villages, and there tends to be more view lots in this area as well, even though we didn't include those in these calculations. Okay, but bond has jumped up a little bit, maybe about $1,500 a year on average. Homes are a little bit newer. The bond balances in here are going to be probably $13,000 to $20,000. So a little bit more expensive part of the villages. All right, now we're going to get down to this Finney. Now Finney, the area of Finney, Marsh Bend, McClure, I think Linden is a separate one. I know DeSoto's down there. Those villages down there, a couple of years ago, I would have said, stay away from there. Actually, I think that's now one of the better locations in the villages. A little bit less expensive than you would up here near Brownwood, but you have decent access to Brownwood. But what's nice is you'll actually have, you do now have access to this Eastport area, even though it's not built up yet. But in general, you have access to both areas. A lot of amenities, when this was first built, it was called built on an island, meaning you did not have golf cart access to the rest of the villages. The bridges weren't built over the turnpike or over 44 yet. So the Gary Morse, who is the previous developer, just put in a ton of amenities down there. Except for championship golf courses, you do have quite a few of 9-hole golf courses down there. You've got real grass, pitch and putt things, trails, probably more rec centers and pools per capita, Finney Bar and Grill. So there's just more in Finney because they knew they built it on an island. But now that it's all connected, it's actually a decent place to live. All right, now we're going to talk about this area right here, when I call newer area. And this is part of the resale market. I would say right about here is going to be the Sawgrass, which I call like a half of a town square. It's more of like an outdoor food court that happens to have entertainment. So, a lot of people enjoy it. When you start going down this away from Sawgrass, this area right here has the percentage of homes that are for resale, not new, resale homes is 4 times greater than anywhere else in the villages. It's doesn't have convenient access to Brownwood, to Sumter Landing. It has one of the highest tax rates in the villages because it's Lake County as well as Leesburg. So very high tax rate. Also not much to do. And I'm going to show you that in a couple slides from here, but not much to do down here. All the amenities, okay, but no conveniences. So any errand you're running, you're hopping in your car for a long time. Again, we're starting to get to the outskirts of town. Right. So in that area, you're going to pay, and this is where it gets real expensive. You're going to have the highest tax rate in there, probably by, maybe greater than 50% more than you would have up in this area. And you are now at about $3,200 a year, $50,000 bond balances, but newer homes. But again, resale rate in there is pretty high. People just are not liking it as much. Now down here, I don't have any numbers because down here is brand new, less than a year old, and none of those houses have hit the resale market yet. When you buy a home from the villages, you can sell within a year, but there's a lot of rules associated with that. And one of them is you can't list it outside. You have to list it with them. So since we're within a year, there's been no homes on the MLS side of the market. And if you want to, I have another video that talks about the 2 markets here in the villages. We're going to talk about why the homes are, brand new homes are less expensive. So, by the way, that's one thing I haven't talked about yet, is that if you're going to look for a new home, you are going to pay less for a new home for a number of reasons. Just one of them is, the pure location of it. I do think the Villages tries to, knows that pricing can get out of control here, and they're trying not to be part of the cause of the pricing not getting out of control. As an example, view lots are at a huge premium here, and they cap it. Here's how much the view lot is. If you get a home with a view lot here, you're going to pay a lot less for a view lot new than you would on the resale market, as an example. But the other reason down here, and I'm going to show you here, let's zoom into the bottom down here. Okay, and we're on this is the Villages website, and I'm going to just search the amenities by category. So let's go town squares and entertainment. Look what happens. They show them up here. Here's Paddock. Here's this. They didn't even have Spanish Springs. I don't know why. And here's Sawgrass, but they don't even show Eastport. Let's talk about championship golf. Okay, look where all the golf is. It's all up here. Now, This one's opened recently. I don't know why they don't have a bigger badge on it. And this one's being built as we speak. Okay, but if you're into golf, all the golf is north. So that's one of the reasons why, like, the most expensive homes are the newest homes in the traditional part of the villages right here. If you're a big golfer, I highly recommend you be north of 44 because that's where all the golf courses are. Let's go executives. Same thing. These are the 9-hole courses. Now, I don't think they have them all listed because I know there's quite a few down here, but in general, most of the 9-hole golf courses up there. Let's look at shopping. See, they zoom in away from where they're building. Okay, all the shopping is up here. Let's look at sports and recreation. Again, not as many down here. Let's look at medical. All up there. Let's look at professional. Mainly up there. Okay, and miscellaneous. Again, down here you can have amenities. You can have pools. You're going to have pickleball. You're going to have tennis. You're going to have rec centers. But when you need to run an errand, you're going to be in your car for a while. And it's going to take a few years for all this to be built up. I would estimate that Eastport, and again, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would estimate just by looking at it, probably another year and a half from that being built out, if not a little bit longer, and even a little bit longer before all the restaurants and stores and stuff are rented out. So that's one of the reasons why it is a little bit less expensive to buy a newer house. I took the average square footage of of a designer, which is, let's say 1,950 square feet, and just multiply it by price per square foot to give you a better context. If we're in the Spanish Springs area and we get a designer home at $228 a square foot, you're probably going to be $440. If I'm down in the Brownwood area, that same house is going to cost me $10,000. So just a big difference between these. Then in here, what I do is I take the CDD on average per year, the bond per average in year, and the estimated taxes on a home of this price, and this is what you would pay annually in taxes. So if I'm in Spanish Springs area, even though it has a higher tax rate, I don't have the bond or the CDD, it's going to be about that. In this newest area that I talked about, you're looking at about $10,000 in taxes versus being in Sumter at about $6,000 for taxes. And you can see, north on Buena Vista, similar prices, similar priced homes. You're going to be, $4,000 in Sumter County and about $6,500 in Marion County. So just things to take into account. Again, you don't have to know all this because I'm going to show you something. And here's my cost of living calculator. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I have separate videos on this if you want to take a look at it. But one of the things I wanted to show you is here's my, as an example, my annual tax bill. This number up here is the monthly housing cost. This includes what you're going to pay for gas, electric, water, phones, etc. Over here, I allow you to make the changes. There's like an area map sort of. So there's all these different little areas in here. This is Sumter where you pay a Wildwood tax as well. This is Sumter where you don't pay a Wildwood tax. In here's Lake County, Fruitland Park tax. Down here is going to be Lake County and some of it. But Leesburg. So Lake County and Leesburg is a little bit more expensive. Up here be Lake County and Lady Lake. Up here, Marion County. So if I go back to this tab over here, I can just real quickly just see, okay, if I've got a $450,000 house, it's a designer. I'm not getting a loan on it because I don't want to, factor that in. So if I'm in Sumter County at a $450,000 home, my annual tax bill is going to be about $5,500. If I take that same one and go down to Lake and Leesburg, my annual tax bill now goes up to $8,900. Now that includes the bond. I make some estimations on the bond. If I'm in kind of the newer area, the newest areas where the building, where it's Sumter, Wildwood, I'm going to spend about $7,000 in taxes because you need to add the Wildwood city tax in there. You don't have to memorize all this stuff. This calculator does take that into account. So again, if you like a copy, you can email me for that. So that concludes this section. In summary, inside the villages, you can spend a lot more than outside the villages. Once you get inside the villages, less expensive up north where the homes are older, more and more expensive as you go south towards Brownwood. Once you go past Brownwood into the newer areas, you get into slightly higher tax areas, not as many amenities, and the pricing of the house starts to go down a little bit, but the overall costs go up because the bond is much more expensive and taxes are more expensive. So that's just kind of a general things that will affect pricing here. In the last section, what we're going to cover is going to be how elements of the home, golf cart garage, stucco, types of lots, etc., how those will affect pricing of the home. As always, if you'd like a copy of that nifty cost of living calculator, you can email me right here at davemontysales@gmail.com. Or if you'd like a copy of my free 42-page guide, Buying and Selling a Home in the Villages, you can email me right here at davemontysales@gmail.com. I hope you found the video informative. Hope to see you around the Villages. Take care.